Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Fantasy Fiends podcast. I'm your host, Stevie Collier, and I'm here with my co-host, Andy Peliquin. And today we are honored to have the guest, Matt Gilbert, and he is the author of The Dead Gods Do, and that is what we're going to be reading out of today. Welcome to the show, Matt.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
That was
You're
really
super
good
lucky, Matt. Yeah, I was going to say this is probably the first time in 84 episodes that Stevie hasn't number one done the intro in another language.
I nailed
it. Messed it up, and number three nailed the guests' names. Right on.
There's a little pause. There was a little pause there.
As with his French language influence, I'm sure he was thinking Gilbert as your name, and so he controlled himself.
Yeah,
I respond to pretty much anything, including a few foul words. So
I could say that about myself too, definitely. And today we have an awesome show for everyone out there. But first, we are going to get into something cool that happened to us this week. Andy, did you want to start out?
Sure. Yeah. So this week has been an interesting week for me. In addition to launching the second book in the Heirs of Destiny series, which is super exciting, I basically had to restructure the entire last half of my latest work in progress. So I spent this afternoon basically redoing the entire story. And this book is looking like it's going to hit 150 to 200,000 words. Easy. Like I'll be surprised if I can get it into less than 150,000 words, because it's this military story that's getting crazy complex, and the fun is yet to come.
Jeez, that sounds really difficult.
It is crazy hard. Like I basically had to relay out my entire continent map, because I need a bunch of soldiers from one place to reach a different place in a certain amount of time for this story thing to work. So what I had to do, so I basically had to say, okay, the garrisons that I had them laid out before is not going to work, so I have to figure this out. The characters, they're not marching next week, they marched last week. Just basically figuring all that stuff out, so that when the time comes and they do that, the scene that I want to write is like that scene in Lord of the Rings 2 in Helm's Deep, where the battle's gone to shit, everything's death and chaos and loss, and then the riders appear on the hill, and there's exactly. So that's what I want to happen. And instead of Gandalf, I've got this little rat-faced scout at the head of the legionnaires.
It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be tons of battle and stuff. It's based on 2 or 3 battles from British history, not only battles with the Vikings, the Saxons, the Anglo-Saxons, the Vikings, but also the invasion of Normandy, William the Conqueror's battles with William of Hastings. Sorry.
Battle of Hastings, 1066.
The Battle of Hastings, yeah. And so actually I have my character. He's sort of this king of the allied clans. He's going to take an arrow to the head or to the body, and it's going to look like in the Battle of Hastings he dies, and so his men are going to collapse like what happened in the Battle of Hastings, but then he'll be alive and they win the day, blah blah blah. But they're just getting to that part of the story where they're going towards this negotiation with the leader, this king. And so, you've got to go through the negotiation steps. You've got to go through the tactics. You've got to go through the first battle where they lose, then the second battle where they, and so, yeah, it's going to be 150,000 words easy.
So it's the battle that's taking so long.
Well, no, because it's not just the battle. So this is one thing that I've learned through writing military. So the battle is a small component of the actual story. You've got, number one, the tactics behind it all. Okay, how are we going to get enough men there in time to affect things? But then you've also got the logistics of, okay, how long is it going to take to get there? Do I need to, if I leave right now, are my horses going to make it there in time to affect this battle? All of that. But then you've also got the effects that each battle has on the characters. Like one character, he is a native half-breed, and this is the first battle of the book that he kills his own people. And so you can't walk away from that battle unscathed. And so every battle, everything has to have some sort of character development. And of course, every character in the book, there's 7 main characters. they have to have some sort of arc, some sort of growth, some sort of intrigue, mystery, struggle, development. And so that takes a lot of real estate. So I think I'm right now at 75,000 words. And I've given each of the characters a bit of character development, but now I've got to do it again with this final battle.
I feel like if you're not doing military, you are more welcome to assume a lot more of those details.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, you can do it with military. You know, like the truth is that these characters are operating behind the scenes. They're special ops. So I could write it in certain things, like they're just going to do a very specific mission, you know, like marching 1,000 miles to put a bullet in the enemy's eye, or an arrow in this case. It's fantasy. You could have these kind of things, but then you miss out on the bigger story overall, because there is a war going on. So I did approach it like, all right, I'm going to do these smaller things, these tactics behind the scenes. But then as the story evolves, because of the characters, because of their relationship to the battle and the story overall, I couldn't just have them quietly behind the scenes. It ended up being drawn into the war at large, and their small actions, you know, there's 7 men. So how many, like the last battle, it was 7 versus 3,000. How the hell are they going to do anything there? But because of their, you know, proper planning, proper logistics, proper support, everything, they win the battle. So it's all about finding
the mage and clerics casting earthquake. And
well, no, that's the beauty. That's the beauty of this series, is that there's no magic.
Oh.
Well, no, okay,
No
so
magic.
there is magic. There's healing magic, just a little bit though. One of the characters has these holy stones that he can use to heal. Now, it's not like, you know, resurrect people. One guy gets a super bad wound to his neck, and he just closes the wound and stops him from bleeding out, but he's still wounded. You know,
The elf stones.
It's a little bit like that, but it's small magic. So there's the magic, and then there's alchemy, in the sense like this guy is using chemistry to make explosives. So that's the way
how the 7 men.
Exactly. So there,
It's
so
a
like
chemical earthquake.
well, not even that thing. Like, for example, in the battle that I wrote earlier this week, it's they march around behind the enemy, and then the alchemist lights the marshes on fire. Like the guy, he literally lights the water on fire. You know, Greek fire, whatever, however, you know, alchemical you want to get into it. And so the enemy, they see this attack from behind them, they turn. They attack, you know, they counterattack, or they run out to chase the men, and that leaves an opening for the good guys with a small force to sort of retake things, strategic maneuvering. So it's a really, really interesting and freaking hard challenge to figure out how such a small company of men can have such a huge effect
Absolutely.
on war in a way that you would, you know, like in Rainbow Six, which is sort of the vibe that I'm going for. You know, you've got men with heavy machine guns, sniper rifles, artillery support, you know, mortars, claymore mines. You can do these big, huge kills. Whereas with these guys, it's literally sword, dagger, spear, crossbow, a little bit of alchemy. That's it. So it's a huge challenge, but so much fun. I think I want to go on record as saying that right now this is the only series of its type that exists when it's actually published, because, you know, the Black Company is more mercenary. You know, there is a little bit of it, but it's not the sense of modern spec ops in a fantasy world. So this I would like to say is groundbreaking fiction. So I want to make it really good, which means delving into every single aspect of the war, the characters, their psychology, their actions, the backstory for each of them, the emotional development, the strategy in the world at large. It's huge, but it's going to be good once it's done.
Yeah, you don't have the epic magic to work with either there, like Black Company did. So
exactly, and that's what makes it so much more. I feel like it makes it more fun, because in Black Company you've got One Eye and Goblin and Silent, and they do this
more like Limper and Soulcatcher, but
right, yeah. But even then, like on the later books, that when they're in the South, you know, they've got the magic on their side, so then in a way, it almost detracts from the actions of the non-magical characters, because there is these big magic things that happen. And so you're focused on the big magic as opposed to the smaller human characters who, through their courage, through their cunning, through their skill, through their strength, they do these amazing things. And that's what I wanted to focus on for this series, this group of special ops people who have trained their asses off, who are the best in their fields. And because of that, they succeed by pooling their resources, their minds, working together, making the impossible happen with no magic.
It sounds like you're playing Risk by yourself.
It is exactly that complicated.
That's what it feels like. And this is all planned out too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I had the 4 books are outlined. I basically had to rework the outline for book 2, the second half of book 2, because the story that I had planned originally, it was just a little bit too vague, and then I wanted to go a different route with it. Book 3 and 4 are outlined. I'm probably going to have to change up book 3's outline according to some of the new story elements that I have introduced here. But some of the stuff that has come up has made the story so much more interesting, because you get this look into the characters and who they were before, who they are now. And it's, it's taking a lot of research, like talking to some awesome friends who have given me the insight into the mindset of a soldier, not only a career soldier, but someone who's brand new or someone who's dedicated themselves to special ops training. And so getting this view from all of these people has made the story so much more accurate and so much better, I think.
Jeez, man. That's awesome. I love how much work you're putting into the series. Yeah. I always knew you're passionate about it, but geez.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The downside of making it so long, though, is that I may not be able to hit my deadline of having it, finished and edited in time for my, I think, October. So I know September is going to be the launch of book 1, October, November, December kind of thing, like 1 a month for the last 4 months of the year to keep that. But, 150,000 word books are long, and they're going to take a lot of work to get edited and all of that. Yeah. So we'll see if I can pull this off and have it ready for the end of the year.
Still be close, though.
Yeah.
I would agree.
And what about you, Matt? Anything cool? I think you said you did something last week.
Besides the fact that I'm working on my next book as well, I'm trying to apply all the edits. So I can definitely attest to the fact that this takes longer than people would expect. I just got back from a business trip I did to Monterey, California. So we had a good time out there. Visited a little bit of family out there. The wife is a native from there. And it was quite long, and with 5 kids, it was challenging, to say the least. So, and I'm glad to be back.
That's nice. With 5 kids, everything is challenging. Even just going to the bathroom or walking up the stairs.
Yes, it is. Going to get burgers is a problem. Yes. Even.
Oh man, that's nuts. Yeah, I did that with my.
What do you mean $100?
Yeah, with my 2 boys and their friends. A couple of weekends ago, just to Wendy's drive-thru. I was like, all right, so what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? No, I want to change my mind at the last minute. It was like a 5-minute process just to get a fast.
Fine, we're leaving. Nobody's getting anything.
I don't have to worry about even a piece of that. Just myself. Myself.
It's good
and
though.
I.
It's well worth it, man. I would advocate for everybody for sure. So
to have kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
I didn't have kids till I was over 40,
right
man.
Now.
I didn't have him until I was over 40, and I'm like, well, I should have done this earlier.
Really, after 40?
Yep.
You don't
look a whole lifetime.
Yeah, wow. I'm 40 years old. So how was it like having kids at 40?
It was probably easier than if I were younger, actually, because I was no longer an idiot. So I'd learned a few lessons about life. So a little more patient, a little more money in the pocket, that kind of thing. So you're less hand to mouth, I suspect, for dealing with all those kinds of things. So
yeah, I wouldn't know and won't know for quite a while. So as for me, I had I don't know if this was last week's cool thing, but I have had my artist do some revisions on the cover for book 1 of my newest series. And they came back looking awesome. I finalized it, and now it's in the hands of the typographist to do his work. I know. I'm looking really forward to it.
Are you using Christian for the typography or someone else?
Someone else. Van Gatesh from Facebook.
Okay.
Joshua Robertson suggested to me. He's done excellent work so far. Very patient with me too, because I usually have him revise some stuff. Let's see. And I have finished the 3rd book. That was last week's cool news.
Yeah.
And tonight I will be 50 pages into its edit. So,
Ooh, getting some edits done. That's nice.
Yeah, I'll be a quarter of the way done.
I'm not gonna
Get
lie.
like a half a page done per day, man. I just
Oh,
like
yeah.
I start on it. I think I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna shoot myself or something. I leave. It's just agonizing.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Although I will say that there are days and there are weeks when I look forward to the editing process, just because pure creation is pretty exhausting. When you're going through you're bleeding onto the page, you're trying to make sure that each character's reactions are accurate and that the story works, and it takes a lot to do this creation. So sometimes editing is just so beautifully mindless. The story at large is written, so I can just go in and fill out the details. I can get lost in the color of the leaves or the taste of the stick that the guy pranked his friend with, or things like that. So it's wonderful to get some editing done, I'll say.
Yeah, I'm in that. It came at the perfect time because I was sick over the weekend, and I'm still feeling it in my head. So I'm glad I'm not at that creative process. But you're right, the creative process is just extremely draining. And I was listening to Earl Nightingale, and he is a self-improvement guy from the 60s, and he has a whole chapter on writing. And he talks about how writing is one of the hardest professions. In his opinion, the hardest, but I'll say one of the hardest professions, and that it's also one of the easiest jobs to procrastinate at. And that part of the job of writing is, once you're in the chair, to stop messing with the typewriter.
Stop browsing the web,
Yeah.
Stop looking at porn.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge problem. Porn. I mean, that's a 24/7 thing to me, basically.
Turn off World of Warcraft.
I better shut some of these porn tabs while I'm talking to you guys too. That was a joke. That was a joke.
We can't see your screen. You're okay, man.
Andy, can we share my screen real quick?
It's in the reflection.
If it's porn, Stevie, no. Save that for the Fantasy Fiends After Dark show.
Yeah. Rebecca's Fantasy Fiends After Dark. That's right. So today we have a very interesting topic. I sound like I'm doing some kind of educational video. Today we have a very educational video for you students. No, today
It's the author in the wild.
The author in the wild. It's like me pooping behind a tree with a typewriter in my hand. Everybody picture that. Okay,
so that is something I would never ever want to picture, Stevie. Thank you.
You'll be right about to go to sleep tonight.
I have an idea for a short story now.
Yeah, boom, I'm there. I do have some more good news. I was laying in bed, and they say inspiration comes at leisure. And I figured out how to write book 4 and book 5 to finish the series.
Ooh, that's awesome.
It's always
it came to me in a dream. Yes, so very exciting. I have never done this before, but I'm not a big writing notes in bed kind of person. I've never had that, but this is the first time I knelt over and grabbed my journal to write something in it.
That's awesome.
Just in the very off chance I forgot it, but
that's happened to me so many times in the last few days. So there's this TV show on TV right now. It's called SEAL Team, and it's a great show. But I've watched 3 episodes of the new season 2, and every single time I've had to stop it and write down some idea. Every time. So it's like, okay, I can't watch this show at night because I'm writing about sort of a special ops team. So everything that happens in every episode sparks some new idea. So it's like, all right, I've got to be very careful when I watch this. Can't watch it at night. I can only watch it during the day.
Yeah,
you guys, you're writing your ideas down. Real men get their great ideas and they forget them and they hate themselves forever. So,
well, my wife got me this present last year of a pen that has a flashlight on the tip. So I just click it and write everything down in my awesome notebook. Ooh, this notebook actually, which is super cool, that a fan sent me. It is so awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, handcrafted leather, this whole thing. And this pen here is the one that lights up in the dark. Yeah, it's so nice. So I just have this by my bedside.
The emergency night idea book.
Yeah, because that's when all the best / worst ideas come when I'm trying to go to sleep.
So
on with the topic.
Man, I'm just thinking how jealous I am of that damn book. No one sends me anything. We had a guy on the podcast.
He's too far away for us to mug him for it, too.
I know. Well, he's just one plane trip away from me, except I'll just freeze on the way over there.
I know. We won't survive the climate, man.
I know.
Yeah, right.
I need to grow my beard out.
Today it's 20 degrees Celsius below zero, and it feels like 29 below. So it is a great day to be an author and work inside the house.
Yeah.
Today it was like 83 here.
Oh man.
Was a high of 83?
Yeah.
Dang, I think today's high was like 75.
Yep.
But it's now it's cold now. Damn,
It's still warm outside.
Florida people. It's still warm?
Dude, come on. Florida's got everything. It's got like, drug addicted cannibal zombies and gators. I mean, it's interesting, awesome all the time down here, man.
Drug addicted camels?
Yeah.
Drug
you guys don't know
addicted
about, yeah, what do they call it? Bath salts, man? The bath salt zombies?
Oh,
yeah. Not camel, Stevie, zombies.
Zombies.
Cannibals.
Face eating.
Like they eat people's, the dude ate the guy's face down here when he was
that
like
was in Florida?
Drugs. Yeah. More than once, as I recall.
Wait, isn't that like a Reddit thing? It's from a man from Florida, like starting out the headline.
Man. Yeah, dude, it's common. Well, okay, the crazy stuff, man. Florida's got the whole the crazy rap and stuff, but that is for real, man. There was a dude on this bath salts that literally attacked and like ate the dude's face and stuff, man.
Yeah, Florida is where crazy shit happens.
Man,
that's right.
If I would have been there, I would have said, "See you later,
good thing
alligator."
We can still carry down here because you never know, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, on to the topic for the week. This is an exciting one. One of the things that I've loved most about being a fantasy author is that I am able to discuss and explore issues that if I was writing modern contemporary fiction, I wouldn't be able to. Let's talk, for example, racism. Racism is one that everybody wants to avoid because it's a very sensitive issue and with good reason. Or gender and sexuality, politics, religion, all these things. It's so difficult to discuss these things in real life because people can feel attacked, people can feel offended, they can feel like that you're going after them, or because you disagree with them, you're someone who should be attacked in return. But when you do it through a fantasy story, it gives this dissociation where there's this lens. I like to call it the lens of fiction, where you can talk about these things through the context of a story where someone who is reading it won't feel personally attacked. Let's play with religion for a minute, right? In religion, if I was to say, Stevie, Christianity is stupid, you would feel personally attacked because
your mom.
Exactly. And I'd feel offended because of my mom.
Yeah.
But now let's say, Stevie, this religion that I made up that's called the worship of Guga, it's stupid. Then you'll be like, okay, yeah, it is a stupid name to begin with, so let's see what's going on. And then so now there may be some parallels between it and Christianity or Buddhism or Islam or whatever, but it's not called by the name that offends you. So people who are able to be a little bit more open-minded, they're able to examine these things, to read them without feeling personally attacked or offended. And so that's one of the beauties of speculative fiction, is that you're allowed to speculate. You have the freedom to speculate because of this dissociation. And so, Matt, you were talking about some big controversy going on this week in the fiction world, no?
Yeah. Her name, Zhao, I believe.
I think Amelie Zhao.
Yeah, and she's apparently been targeted, and people are saying, "Oh well, her thing was racist." Which, I mean, I saw the tenuous explanations for this, and I'm like, this is crazy. I mean, because she's created this fantasy world that dealt with some concept that, I don't know, people felt that it somehow wasn't handling the issue correctly, and it's like, I don't even know where they're coming from with this, man. It's actually kind of creepy to see how like people come out of the woodwork, kind of like zombies and stuff, and just attack, man. It's frightening to see people trying to destroy creative works for no real reason. It doesn't feel like to me.
Yeah, and so that's one thing that's sort of highlighted. Number one, the importance of speculative fiction, because it does create this distance between readers and the stories, so that they don't feel personally attacked. But then at the same time, you are able to discuss issues. Now, again, not everything's handled awesomely, which is something that we as writers are always struggling to be better, to be more human, to do these things better. But sometimes we fail. Sometimes people don't take it the right way. From what I understand, her story is based off of slavery and indentured servitude in China, which is where she's from. But
Right, and
because
she's criticized for not treating it like how the American people thought of it, which seems like completely hypocritical. I mean, isn't that like culture centric to say that she has to cast those things from an American lens or something, you know?
yeah, so the issue is that because Americans have a very different history with slavery than let's say the Chinese version of it, she was writing for an audience that was used to the Chinese version of slavery versus the fact that her audience is American. Most of the people who read in English are going to be American. Of course, there's the British and Australians and Canadians and people around the world, but the largest, Amelie Zhao. Amelie
Chao.
Yeah. And so she wrote this story based on Chinese culture or Chinese history. And then because it was in an American market, it rubbed people the wrong way. And that is unfortunate because the story could have been excellent. It could have given people a huge insight into Chinese culture and the history of slavery in China.
I don't think it rubbed people the wrong way. I think that there's like people out there who are just like professionally aggrieved, man. I mean, they're like Bitcoin miners, right? They're just spending crazy amounts of energy to find something to complain about. I didn't see anything in the complaints or explanations of why this was offensive that made any sense to me at all. It just, it was looking for something to attack her with. Is what it's saying to me.
Yeah.
And what is her book? Blood Heir?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it seems a pretty, ordinary young adult, a princess. She ends up enslaved or something, I guess, because she can do magic or whatever, right? And there are a group of people who apparently, I don't know, some people maybe think that her character is black and so that it wasn't handled. But, I mean, I don't understand how you can even try to ascribe an American experience onto a fantasy culture, right? I mean, I have this problem in my work as well, in that I'm like, you can't apply that, the racial concepts of our culture to, people who happen to be of a certain skin color in this story. They haven't lived that same life. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. And so this is why I love fantasy as a genre, is that we're able to step back and we have this dissociation where we can say, okay, I'm not talking about American history. I'm not talking about European history or Japanese history or Australian history or South American history. I'm talking about fantasy history. Now, there are going to be a lot of parallels with real world because that's what we base our life off. That, humans do what humans do. And so being able to examine the world or the world at large through the context of a story allows us to discuss these issues in a way that people would never, ever consider doing it otherwise. Like, imagine if I was writing about a modern special ops team, right? And my character, who happens to be half native in my world, it turns out that he's half, let's say half Asian. Now, I, as a white writer, can't give any context of what it means to be someone raised in with Asian heritage in an American culture, right? But what I can do is I can research all sorts of psychological issues that face people who are dealing with these biracial cultures with mixed heritage, and I can write that into the story. Now, it's definitely not, something that everybody will identify with, but when people are able to read it, they're able to see that this character comes to term with his heritage in X fashion. Maybe it'll help them say, okay, there's this way, this character did it this way. He found peace, or, he found acceptance through this. Maybe that's a way for me, or maybe not, but being able to do it through the context of a story,
right,
allows us not to sermonize, because no one wants to be preached at, but to put forth another perspective, to posit theories and
that's the big thing. That's the big thing. I mean, you remember, like, you play D&D, you experiment, try on different roles, maybe this time I'll be a wizard, or maybe I'll be evil, maybe I'll play a girl or whatever, right? I mean, a lot of that is about, experimentations, and it gives you empathy, at least somewhat. You sort of, you think about things, try to think of things from those different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
If I write about these characters, then I'm at least depicting them in a way that they're a human being, right? I mean, you can have people who are evil who, it's still, you can get inside their head and try to understand that they're human beings, and sort of come to some understanding of them, and how that can affect the real world is, you don't go around necessarily thinking that everyone is, bizarre and evil. You don't have to fight them. If you have a chance to persuade them if you understand them.
Yeah, I love that. I love how being an author, and especially fantasy, because I write fantasy, I can explore these different things. As a 6.5 foot man, I don't think I could write accurately a story about a 5.5 foot woman unless I did a lot of research. But now that I've done a ton of research, I have a bit more clarity on how my wife feels when I loom over her when I'm trying to make an opinion, or how my 5-foot daughter feels when the guy who's standing next to her is talking super loud right in her face. Being able to do this sort of thing, it helps me as an author understand the world around me better. And I think it's made me a much better and more understanding person. And I'd like to hope that through telling these stories the way that I do, it also helps readers to have a bit better understanding of the people around them.
Well, it makes you a better artist too, I think. I mean, this is the one thing that maybe gets to me more than anything else about this, right? The suggestion that I or you or any of us as an artist, as a creator, that we owe people something, that we have to write something some way, that's amazingly offensive to me. It goes against the entire point of creating art at all, right? I mean, art is personal expression. It's something that you do because you're trying to say, this is how I see the world, and that's a communication, right? I mean, it could be wrong, maybe it doesn't resonate with people, maybe it does, but it's the personal nature that makes it unique, right? I mean, I feel like it's hypocritical for other creative people, because there were some authors who went after her as well. I feel like it's hypocritical of them to go after people and try to censor them and stuff, man. I mean, the idea that somebody shouldn't be able to feed themselves or their children because you disagree with their art is about as offensive a thing as I can come up with. Now, why don't we have Crusaders complaining about that, right?
Yeah, but then at the same time, art is something that is a medium of communication that is open to interpretation and judgment.
That's true. So the reader completes it. I agree.
Exactly. So it's sort of this relationship that, like any marriage, you have to find the way to communicate effectively. You've got to find the balance, the give and take. There are artists who are raw and gory and in your face about it. And we're talking art here, painting, sculptures, all of that stuff, stuff that's just right there in your face. And a lot of people doesn't resonate with them. They don't like that. There are people who are just all about that. But because we as authors are trying to communicate to as broad an audience as possible, or we're writing something for a specific audience, we've got to find.
I don't think that's every author. I don't think that's every author, but some authors, yes.
Well, let's say you, Matt, you're writing for fantasy readers, right?
I've always told everybody I'm writing for me, and so it kind of comes out like I'm writing things that that interest me. I'm trying to express viewpoints that I find interesting, or sequences of events that I think makes sense how this would happen. I probably am not that unique, and I think that there are other people out there who also find those things interesting. Yeah, but I think if I don't please me first, then I'm putting out crap, honestly.
Agreed. But then the reason of expressing these thoughts through a medium of communication is essentially to communicate, right? So you're like if your goal was to talk about a certain thing in your mind, you wouldn't put it into words. You put it into words because maybe on a subconscious or unconscious level, you want to connect with someone else who can think like you. You want to find your pack, kindred spirits.
That's one way of looking at it. Yeah. I always look at it as like the characters sort of want to be alive, that this is the only way that they can live is to be put down in paper. But that way lies, you guys are going to be thinking of crazy at that point.
No,
probably not if you do writing, but
no, that's something that I can tell you without a doubt. It's the characters that drive the story for me, but it's my connection with the characters that keep me interested in the story. But ultimately, when I publish this book, it's so that I can communicate some part of myself, even a small part. I may not be able to put a whole lot of myself in a 5-foot woman, but I can put a little bit, enough that readers, when they read about this 5-foot woman that I wrote, they can say, okay, this is a perspective on the world that I can get behind. It may not be 100% here's Andy on a page, but I've put this little bit of myself, this bit of my soul, my thoughts, my brain, my heart, my emotions onto the page and put it out there that I want people to identify with. So it's our means of communicating.
At the very least, you don't want to say this is ridiculous and dumb.
Yeah.
You know, this makes no sense to me. This doesn't ring true. Yeah, I can see that.
And because unfortunately, art, fiction, books is a genre, is a medium that requires this contract. I put out stories you like, you pay me, right? So it is in many ways there for some authors who do it for love of the authoring. There's not a sort of feeling of obligation to establish a relationship with the reader. But I know for me personally, when I write a story, I want to tell the most honest, genuine story possible, but I am still conscious of the fact that I am making a contract with people who read my books. And so it's a lot of purists will say that's the wrong way to approach it because you're supposed to write for the love of the art. And that's not wrong. But for people who want to make money doing it, who want to earn a living at it, you can't, no man is an island. So no fiction stands completely isolated. People are going to have opinions. Maybe people are going to love it. Maybe they're going to hate it. But there is sort of this unspoken contract between author and reader.
Yes, and that's any of us who are involved in creative things, you know, kind of the free speech industry or whatever you want to call it, right? That's how it's supposed to work, ideally. And what I found appalling about this particular incident is that her voice was silenced. She was shut down. She's not publishing the work anymore now, right?
Yeah.
And it's one thing for people to say this sucks and I don't want to read it. It's another thing for, you know, a mob of people to attempt to silence somebody, right? There's plenty of fiction out there that I think this is boring, this is not for me, or this is offensive, I hate it, right? You know, I mean, romance novels, come on, right?
Yeah.
But the notion that this person should be silenced because other people are like, well, we don't think that the way you did this is how we wanted you to do it. That's a terrible precedent, I think, man. I think it's a terrible precedent for everybody.
Absolutely. And it does definitely infringe on the freedom of speech. But then again, just because we, the authors, are able to speak our minds freely in our books, that doesn't prevent the reader from speaking their minds freely in terrible reviews. And so, you know, it's definitely gone to an extreme in this instance.
Well, these are reviews before the book's published, right? People who haven't read the book, one starring it, saying it's racist, and, you know, basically manufactured claims. That's what bugs me, right? I mean, sure, go ahead and tell me my stuff sucks, but like, don't make things up, you know? I mean, don't come after me as a person.
Yeah, for sure. And so I do believe she is ultimately going to publish it. She's going to unpublish it, or she has unpublished it, and I think she's going to edit it, or maybe not. I don't know. But I think I heard somewhere that she will redraft it because I believe the story, the concept itself is solid. I mean, if it wasn't, the publisher would not have gotten behind it to push it. So I think she is going to retool it a little bit so that it is more palatable to the American audience, given their heritage of slavery. But that's one of the joys of being an artist, is that you can take suggestions, rework it, and then release the art once more, put it back out there, and have people instantly bond with the same things that they loved about it before. But now that there's the things that they didn't like it have been taken out or have been changed or things like that, all that's left is the good feelings that makes them immediately get attached to the book.
One thing is for sure, you know, they say the no publicity is bad publicity, and certainly until this week, I did not know Miss Thou, and now I do. So, you know, there's that, and I empathize with her. So
yeah, definitely, and she's
Was
definitely
she a big author.
She's a new author.
This is the first time author. She had like a $500,000 contract for 3 books or something like that, right? Yeah. This is her first thing she's done. So, I mean, a really amazing kind of thing, and, you know, kind of shut down by this Twitter mob. It's really, you know, it creeps me out, man. I mean, and it feels wrong. I mean, it's much more offensive than any arguments that anybody came up with against the work itself. I saw no merit to any of those arguments, to be honest. But
did you read it?
The point is, no, I haven't read the book, but I mean, the arguments were so bad that like they
Okay.
didn't make any sense. That's what I'm trying to say, right? It was like, well, we've just decided this. So, there were claims made, but there was nothing to back them up that I saw. So it just was a mess, man. It was just a mess. I think it's tragic.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I can't believe I haven't even heard about this. But back to the topic, I personally, as an author, feel very comfortable messing with many facets of facets. I'm sorry, I'm thinking it's passe in French.
Stop fucking with the faucets and the sinks, Stevie.
Well,
Your
in
parents
French,
are gonna be
passe,
pissed at you
and
running
I
up their water
forget the
bill.
word faucets. I was concentrating on what I was trying to say. We turn on the faucets. Anyway, the many facets of cultures and heritage, and of course, I always end up turning it negative. With the last series I did, slavery was a huge deal, and a leading aspect of the first book. But this time, I'm writing about the fighting of two different cultures, especially when one is getting screwed by all the other cultures due to its climate, which is freezing, meaning they don't have access to a lot of things, and so the other kingdoms abuse that. But that was my take on it. I'm not sure if that's exactly how it would happen, but nothing really. I think what's fun is when we talk about how females are used in writing when it comes to different cultures and stuff like that. And I'm surprised a lot of books haven't been Twitter mobbed like this one has, based on male writers and their depictions of women, maybe.
I have a culture that the torture is considered a womanly art.
Really? Torture
Wait,
is
what?
womanly.
Yeah, like torturing people to get information is considered a womanly art. It's taught to the noble women by their mothers and stuff.
So all the torture is done by the women.
Yes.
Is this in your story?
Yeah, this is actually in the book. It's a minor thing, but yeah, they think the men are squeamish because they're not interested in it. So
That sounds awesome. Why don't we read? Well, we've got the last 20 minutes dedicated to it. So, Matt, as the author, you are the director of this scene. So tell us which parts to read and what part you want to read.
Oh, we're going to do, hold on. Let me bring that up so I can actually read along with you here. So yeah, here's the excerpt. And I tell you what, how about I do Ahmed's lines? And should I, maybe I should give a little kind of setup on what's going on here.
Yeah.
So, Ahmed is a young Xanthian, and the Xanthians are from a very martial culture. He's also fairly ignorant. This is the first time he's traveled in the world. He's traveling with his master, who has sent him to a slave market, and basically to understand how the barbarians, what they call barbarians, they're basically they're like white European types. And Ahmed is he's never seen anybody except for like black people and like Arabic people and stuff. So he thinks they're barbarians, and he's expecting to be in mud and wattle huts and stuff. And he's afraid that he can't like read their expressions because they're not really humans. They're like dogs and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So he's arrived at this slave market, and he's just baffled, and he's trying to figure out what's going on here.
All right. So you'll read Ahmed. Steve, do you want to read the voices or do you want to read the narration?
It's up to you, man. Totally.
All right, I'll read the voices.
Okay.
Now there's Marcus, and there's a few other people. What kind of a person is Marcus?
Marcus is a large warrior type, a big burly guy, and Tyler is a skinny kind of Weasley, not really Weasley, but he's not strong of body. He's more of a businessman.
Okay, and what origin? Like, what accents should I try to do?
Sure. Let's just do some your typical English European kind of guy or something like that.
For Tyler or the barbarian guy?
Oh, either one of them will do.
All right. Very good. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen.
The man on the podium cried. He indicated one of the chained prisoners.
For our first cell today, I have a man of approximately 20 years. He is healthy and strong. What am I bid?
The large barbarian shook his head and spat on the ground. He glanced up at Ahmed as the horse settled in behind them, but either didn't realize or didn't care that Ahmed was listening.
That rat bastard. No mercy in him. We should stick a sword in his gut and treat his people to the same.
The skinny barbarian shook his head and sighed.
Matt.
No, that's you, Andy.
This is Ahmed?
No,
Oh, this is Tyler.
sorry. Yes.
Okay,
That's
so this is Tyler. Okay, it wouldn't make a difference, Marcus. It's so much bigger than the traders. It's a political problem. It will take a political solution. Interdiction. That will change things. Kill the traders. Hit the ships before they pull in. They'll blame pirates. It's not that simple. It would take years of working with the powers that be. My way would take weeks.
Ahmed could resist no longer. He had to understand.
You!
He called to the yellow-haired barbarian.
I do not understand this. Tell me the war you captured these brown men.
The barbarian looked up at Ahmed, shaking his head in amusement.
It is always war with you Xanthians.
He chuckled.
And my name is Tyler, not you.
Forgive me. I forget my manners in my curiosity. I am Ahmed Justinius. I have come to Aviar with my teacher to learn, but I'm confused by much.
Xanthians would have solved this slavery problem a lot sooner.
Marcus grumbled.
And better.
Ahmed's eyebrow rose in surprise.
You make slaves of your conquest, then? I'm surprised. I know little of barbarian ways. I thought it would be a trial until he began calling for bids.
Marcus tried to stifle a laugh and mostly failed. Tyler, however, seemed to grow even sadder.
There is no war.
Ahmed stared at the barbarians in confusion.
Then how are their prisoners?
Marcus grew somber.
No need for a war to take prisoners, boy. Not if you're in the business of trading slaves. You just need to find people who can't do anything about it.
Ahmed answered with a grim nod, understanding now.
How is it that this can even be done?
Tyler pointed to the ship.
They take them from Prima, or islands nearby. They slip up on them in the night. Even if they didn't, it's steel against stone and wood. It's all too easy.
Ahmed waved a hand in derision.
I know well the arts of war, barbarian. I ask how this can be done to a man.
I cannot understand such cruelty either.
Ahmed rolled his eyes in frustration.
Still, your uncivilized mind cannot grasp my meaning.
He pointed at the brown man on the platform, who was even now the subject of much bidding.
What makes you certain that he is a man and not a beast to be subjugated as any other?
Marcus continued laughing silently as Tyler struggled for words.
Gods, Xanthian, are you so arrogant that you cannot see they are men just like yourself?
Ahmed nodded and turned toward the chained man, considering the point.
He looks like a man, aye, but men are judged by their deeds, not by their appearance.
He turned back to Tyler.
A true man would die before allowing himself to be a slave. These men live. I say they are not men at all, but beasts.
Tyler was going angry now, his eyes blazing.
A cruel and ignorant judgment made by a cruel and ignorant young man.
Is it so?
Ahmed gestured to Marcus.
Tell me, would you surrender to such men or fight to the death?
Marcus grinned.
I would fight and I would die, but all men do.
Ahmed turned back to Tyler, beaming with triumph.
What say you now?
Tyler glared up at Ahmed with distaste.
I say that you have much gall to call me a barbarian.
Ahmed waved Tyler's comment aside as if it were a gnat flying in his face.
I will call you that again. Any man who would not fight and die for, if need be, for his freedom does not deserve it.
All men deserve freedom.
A lie. It's like saying all men deserve food, even the ones who will do no work. How will they have it? If they will not take it for themselves, who will? If someone else does, are they not still beholden to him? No man is free unless he makes himself so.
Marcus nodded in agreement as Tyler glared back and forth at them.
It's what I've been telling you all along. It may need politicking too, but politicking alone won't do it. At some point, it comes to steel. It always does with these sorts.
He cast a murderous glare at the man on the platform.
They'll spread that woman in chains up there for the money and not feel a thing while she cries. You better believe they'll stick a knife in you if you get close to shutting them down. Trust me, there will be blood. It's just a matter of whose it turns out to be.
Tyler stared at the ground, his shoulders sagging.
I swore I would never turn to violence again after.
The large barbarian put a hand on the smaller man's shoulder.
So did I. But we were young. If there's one thing I've learned over the years, Tyler, it's that there's a time and place for everything. Men like us, if we want to make a difference, we have to be prepared to fight. And we better be prepared to work with some hard men.
Tyler nodded, clearly miserable. Ahmed scowled down at them.
I think you are too soft-hearted. Why would you take up the cause for men who would not fight for themselves?
Because they could be, they didn't understand what would happen to them until it was too late.
Marcus suggested.
Maybe if they had the chance to fight now, they would.
Ahmed raised an eyebrow, considering it was possible.
Give me your sword. We will see who will fight.
Marcus sighed and reached beneath his cloak as Tyler turned a shocked stare toward him.
You came armed? What the hell do you intend to do here?
Marcus handed the blade to Ahmed.
I don't know. Something. I hadn't gotten that far yet. But I think he'll do better at it than I would anyway.
Ahmed nodded and gave his horse a kick. The beast reared and gave a loud neigh, and Ahmed joined in with his own battle cry. The barbarians immediately scattered, screaming, as he and his mount surged forward and leapt onto the platform, barely missing the slaver. Ahmed drew his own blade and tossed Marcus's on the platform before the slaver. Below, the crowd had stopped screaming and was watching in fascination.
Pick it up, dog.
The slaver looked back and forth between the crowd and Ahmed, as if he expected salvation and was frustrated that it was not forthcoming.
You get down from here right now!
He cried as he backed away.
This is against the law. I have rights!
Ahmed dismounted, chuckling, and kicked the blade toward the slaver.
I know my rights. I think you're very confused about yours.
The slaver backed up again and stood at the edge of the platform.
This is my property. You're trespassing. That's against the law.
Ahmed laughed out loud.
I've heard of your law. I did not believe in your primitive superstition. It has no power over me.
Panicked, the slaver tried to step back again, felt his foot contact nothing at all, and put it back on the platform.
You're crazy.
You're the crazy ones, barbarian. Pick it up.
No.
The slaver kicked the sword back toward Ahmed. Ahmed glared at it for a moment, then nodded.
Take off your clothes.
What?
Ahmed brought the tip of his sword to the man's throat.
Take off your clothes. All of them. Don't make me tell you again.
The slaver stared at Ahmed in shock for a moment longer, and then, in a sudden burst of energy, began tearing off his clothes as if they were on fire. Some of the crowd made catcalls. A bottle came sailing from the crowd, aimed directly for Ahmed, but he ducked the missile.
Will you take the blade?
Ahmed called, pointing at the thrower. The man spun and quickly vanished into the crowd without a word.
Coward dog!
Ahmed cried after him, but his taunts were ignored. He turned back to the slaver.
Against the bar.
The slaver, now fully naked, looked much like the slaves as he tried to cover himself.
Fine, just don't kill me.
The slaver meekly shuffled to the bar and made no move to resist as Ahmed shackled him. Though his eyes were full of fear and loathing, You should
fear me, you barbarian dog. I'm your better.
Ahmed turned back to the crowd and raised his arms in a victory pose.
There's one man who will not fight.
He shouted.
Two if you count the bottle thrower.
He grinned at the crowd. They seemed to be enjoying the spectacle well enough. Perhaps barbarians were much like civilized men after all, at least when they were amused. He bowed with a flourish, then bent to rifle through the slaver's pile of clothes. He stood again, held up a set of keys for the crowd to see, then turned to the brown man chained to the bar.
Will you pick up the sword?
The slave looked at him, confused, terrified.
And fight you?
Aye, to the death. Agree, and I will unchain you.
You're crazy.
The man hissed.
You'll kill me.
Would you die a man or live on as a slave? You might get lucky.
No.
Ahmed stepped back and cast a glance toward Marcus, but the big barbarian would not meet his gaze. The crowd booed. Ahmed turned next to the woman.
And you? Do you cling to life above dignity too? Or would you risk your life knowing that if nothing else, you would die free?
The woman tried to speak, but could only choke out a sob. She nodded and raised a hand. Ahmed shuffled through the various keys until he found the right one and unlocked her legs and one arm. She rushed forward, lunging for the sword, but it was just out of her reach. Ahmed inserted the key into the final lock. The woman glanced at Ahmed briefly, Her gaze, one of infinite distance, 100-yard stare, the contemplation of eternity and a single slim chance. She turned her attention back toward the weapon, straining at her last bond, knowing that steel in her hand was the best she could hope for. Ahmed nodded and turned the key. The woman dove for the blade, and Ahmed kicked her in the face. She staggered, blood pouring from her nose and mouth, but she did not turn aside. Her small hand closed on the hilt and swung it full force towards her opponent. Ahmed parried her attacks, nodding, grinning.
Fight harder.
The crowd was deathly silent now as the naked woman hurled herself at the Xanthian. She was no warrior, nor was she hard of body, yet her muscles obeyed her will. Her shame was gone now. Blow after blow she hurled at Ahmed, screaming in defiance and hatred for all that she had endured.
If sheer will could kill a man, I would already be dead. Enough!
He shouted.
I yield.
The woman seemed not to hear him. She continued swinging and he continued parrying until the message in her eyes and ears at last reached her mind. She backed slowly away, chest heaving, spittle dripping from her lips, fury blazing in her eyes. Ahmed tossed the key ring to the ground in front of her and mounted his horse. He waved at Marcus and Tyler, then snapped the reins and sent the horse over the side of the platform. The crowd moved quickly to clear a path for him. Ahmed sent his horse galloping down the beach as the slaver began to scream. Very nice. That was a good turn of events right there.
That was a lot of fun.
Intense.
Yeah, I did not expect that last part. Hello, you guys there?
I'm here.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So, yeah, I did not expect that last part. So it's kind of like him just riding off into the sunset.
Oh, he goes back to his master at that point and is in somewhat trouble for stirring up all sorts of trouble. They have to flee the cops now. So
So is this like a Roman like culture?
They are kind of a mixture between Arabic and Roman cultures. Yes. So
okay,
they are more based on Romans, but I draw a little bit from Arabic as well. So and some purely fantasy stuff. So they're not an exact copy of anybody.
Gotcha. So it's Ahmed or Ahmed?
Ahmed.
Ahmed. Okay. Good. I thought I was saying that right. Awesome, man. Well, Matt, where can people find you?
Well, the easiest thing is I have a website, www.nihlos.com, and that is you'll find links to everything to where I go. The books are on Amazon, of course, and I have a Facebook page. It's very cleverly named Matt Gilbert Writer. You can find it there, and that's probably all the links that anybody would need to find for me.
Awesome. Well, Andy, anything else you want to add?
That's it for me.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Matt, for joining us on the Fantasy Fiends podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. And guys, if you're watching or listening, please hit that subscribe button and that like button. That helps us out tremendously. We hope you had a great time here at the Fantasy Fiends podcast and hope to see you next Thursday, where we will have another guest and a brand new topic for you. Thank you very much and good night.
Good night.